This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning, and we take a look at the political pieces we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 9th of July, 2020, and I am DM.
I am JM.
And I am GK, and in case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Daily Nation, schools to refund fees paid in advance.
Yes.
And the Standard, pay why teachers are lucky. And in the Star, why Ruto will not quit Kenyatta's Jubilee yet. And I think we should begin with the Star.
Yes.
Yes.
So a frustrated Deputy President William Ruto will neither resign nor quit the Jubilee Party despite his deteriorating relationship with the party leader Uhuru Kenyatta. This is what the Star is telling us. So instead, what Ruto plans to do is continually host delegations at his Karen residence, as he does so every Thursday, and at Sugoi as well, his palatial residence there.
Yeah.
And he will also continue to enjoy the trappings of power until he is ready to leave the party closer to the elections.
Why shouldn't he?
So yeah, why shouldn't he? And additionally, the story also says Ruto was able to cannibalize on Kenyatta's political turf and enjoy significant influence because he was able to put in those MPs, the MPs in central Kenya, a large number of them are in there courtesy of Ruto, says the paper. But all of that has, however, changed given the recent coalition agreements.
Yeah, well, the Star is right. If I was the Deputy President, I would not go anywhere. Yeah, I would stay put because his trump card is really to maintain his position as Deputy President. When you take that away, already it is a fragile situation he is in. If you take that away, he's going to be attacked from all sides.
Yeah, absolutely. And then to make it even better, you can't take that away because he's kept safe and sound by the Constitution.
Exactly.
The only way out, or perhaps the easiest way out for him, is impeachment, or to take him out is impeachment, which in itself is not easy.
Yeah.
So he has security of tenure.
And they built the Jubilee Party together. So until the divorce is finalized and they decide who gets what, he has made himself an outhouse called Jubilee Asili.
An outhouse.
In the meantime, that's where he's in the doghouse out there.
Yeah, so we see what the settlement will be.
Exactly. So we have a 3-part criteria that we're going to use to break down the headlines. We ask ourselves, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And is it thoughtful or just plain lazy?
This is an intriguing headline.
It's intriguing. It's a little bit speculative, but so what? We can park it for now. So let's move to the Daily Nation. And they're telling us that schools will be able to refund fees that were paid in advance.
Yes.
So I think it's for those who are organized and lucky and had prepaid for the year anyway. And I don't think there were too many of those given the pandemic and the economic situation.
Yeah.
So Magoha has directed that primary and secondary heads will refund or give credit notes to parents who paid the fees in advance. However, primary and secondary school heads have come back and said, actually, we won't refund the fee in cash. We'll either forward it to the next school term or we'll give like some sort of credit note. And then there's also now the dilemma of private schools. Private schools have traditionally not played hardball in this period. You know, they've not reduced their school fees by much, and so a whole refund also may bring some sort of contention with the parents. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, and of course the schools are saying that they can't give a cash back to the parents because even though the schools are closed,
it has their cost.
Yes, they're still incurring expenditure. They still have to pay for the utilities to keep the schools lit at night. They have to pay for security.
Exactly.
They have to perhaps pay for pest control so that the school is not overrun by snakes and rodents
by the time the students come back. Yes, no, for sure. So good headline, but it's a little bit misleading because the payment may not essentially be cash back in most cases.
It was a headline to bait parents
and make them happy. So in the Standard?
The Standard is telling us that now that the schools are not in session, teachers will continue to earn a salary with no work. So they're saying that close to 320,000 teachers stayed home from work since March when the pandemic hit us. And with government now suspending learning with the president's latest speech until next year, teachers and students will be home for a total of 9 months, and the 9 months that the teachers will be receiving their salaries.
Yeah.
They're saying that the TSC every month spends 20.6 billion to pay the teachers. Can only say two things here. Number one is great, fantastic, good for the teachers. You know, to begin with, they are grossly underpaid. And this is not just a Kenyan phenomenon. I think all over the world, teachers are grossly undervalued. I mean, these are the people that shape future generations, but they are paid very lowly. So if they're getting 9 months of no work with pay, good for them. And I'd encourage them to get side hustles to supplement that money that they are getting. So so the second thing that I also wanted to say is now that Magoha is telling us, and we said this on Monday, so Magoha is telling us that January they'll be good to go because they're anticipating that the curve would have flattened by then. But we're asking, what is the plan C? What if the curve would not have flattened and it would still be unsafe for children to go to school? Are they putting in place infrastructure that would allow learning to happen, or structured learning, because learning happens all the time, structured education to happen even when they're not going to school? So I think personally I'd be very impressed if Magoha did that. He would be worth his 81-page CV.
It would be
super CS.
And maybe also in the 9 months, yes, you pay them, but also get them to do sort of skills building and learning in this new way, so that when they come back in 2021, they have some skill set. Okay, so who do we give it to? It's between, I feel, the Daily Nation and the Star. Why Ruto will not quit Kenyatta's Jubilee yet.
I would buy that paper, to be honest,
Can we give it our winning headline?
Winning headline.
The Star gives us our winning headline. On to the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we also have a three-part criteria. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy? Let us begin with the Daily Nation. And in the Daily Nation, we have a caricature of a lady checking the temperature of a very old archbishop. And she says, freeze. And she has a temperature gun to his head. And the Archbishop seems to be saying age is nothing but a number. And, you know, Uhuru Kenyatta this week told us that there will be a phased reopening of churches. They have a lot of criteria to meet. One of them is that congregants should be above the age of 13, but below the age of 58. Now, if you've been to PCA and other churches, the likelihood is that your pastor is a little bit older than 58. So... but this is a time for young people to shine.
Take over.
To step up, pick up the mantle. But knowing the old pastors, they probably want to retain it. So they'll say, yes, you will congregate physically, but then I'll preach to you through Zoom. Virtually. So 100 per session. And they didn't even tell us how many 100 people sessions you can have. Couldn't you just keep hosting very many small 1 hour I suppose you can.
It's possible.
I suppose you can if you put the right protocols in place.
So there's ways around it. Okay, let's park the Daily Nation, I think.
And in the Standard, we have a caricature of the Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Mohammed, but in different forms. Is the same guy 4 times. In the first one, it shows him as the Nobel Peace Prize winner. He's there holding a dove, looking very calm, serene, and nice. In the second one, he looks kind of like the governor of Nairobi, Sonko. Maybe a reference to his gangsterness. In the third one, I suppose he's wearing a traditional wear, Ethiopian, referring to, you know, or appealing to the ethnic and the diverse indigenous groups in Ethiopia. And in the last one, he looks like a very stern, despotic military leader. He even has an AK-47 in his hand. And the caption there is, will the real Abiy Mohammed please stand up? So I guess Gado is saying that this Prime Minister has so far showed many different faces. And I think this cartoon is on today because on the 29th of June, there was the assassination of the very popular Ethiopian singer, Hachalu Hundessa. And when that happened, all hell broke loose. In fact, in a province in Ethiopia, there was what they call ethnic cleansing, where over 100 people, 166 people died. And a lot of people are reading the government's response as a reason to be iron-fisted.
I know, and they had shut down the
And,
internet up until this week. So it's very draconian in the way that they've approached this.
Yeah.
Abiy has claimed that external forces were pulling the strings in an effort to destabilize Ethiopia.
Yeah.
And I think he was there referring to the standoff between Egypt
over access to the Nile.
Yeah, so interesting commentary there. I think
historically, Ethiopia was born into orthodoxy and autocracy. And what Abiy attempted to do is to deviate from that,
to go against the grain.
To democratize, to allow certain communities or ethnic groups within Ethiopia to have a bit more leeway, autonomy in how they govern themselves.
Yeah.
But he got a rude shock. He got a rude shock about two years ago when somebody attempted to do a coup on him.
But
and so he attempted to deviate from the iron fist, but inevitably the regime in place, the system has ended up pushing him back into his predecessors. And so he's had to become iron-fisted again. It's not his wish. But these forces outside of government are outside of his government in other regions are compelling him to do so.
That's exactly the thing that is contestable, JM, and this is what Gado is saying: is that was his intention really to be democratic, or was that a facade?
It truly
was. He put forward, but underneath he really was. And even just the West,
even the West, as you pointed out, DM earlier or GK, even the West had recognized his
giving him
intentions
a Nobel
by
Peace
giving
Prize.
him a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah. I see that being revoked, by the way.
He attempted to.
Good commentary there from Gado. Can we move to the Star?
Yes, so on to the Star. So here we have caricatures of religious leaders, some priests and bishops you see there, passing under a limbo dance stick. Now, many of you might be familiar with this stick. It's the one that acrobats take to the minimal level completely, the safari cuts at Safari Park, and they bend over backwards. It's unbelievable, and they, somehow manage to pass under it. And this is the gymnastics that the fat bishops are trying to do here. And so Uhuru Kenyatta there is holding a key representing the reopening of the churches up there.
But the fat bishops don't have to try so hard because the limbo stick is so high.
This is the reopening threshold.
This is what you're saying, GK, is that there's so much leeway
that they can work around the guidelines that are given.
You can have 10 sessions in a day.
Many have asked if the churches have opened, why didn't the bars open and have similar sort of regulations?
Are they both places of worship?
Yeah, to some, isn't it? So who do we, I think we've had really good cartoons today. Who do we give it to?
I really like the Gado commentary.
Yep. JM, do you have a preference?
Why not give it to Gado?
Yeah, let's give it to Gado for giving us food for thought there.
Absolutely.
Gado from the Standard gives us our winning cartoon. And now for our final thought, but before we get there, please subscribe to our YouTube channel.
And now, our final thought. It is inspired by the book entitled A Brief History of China, Dynasty, Revolution and Transformation, From the Middle Kingdom to the People's Republic. Guys, perhaps this is the longest book title we have ever had. And the book is by Jonathan Clements, and it was written in the year 2019, last year. So this book is a very comprehensive look at China's history. So the author takes us through a rich and complex civilization, a very early civilization which had paper, money, writing, gunpowder in ancient times. And very early on, they were already exporting goods, silk, tea, metal implements all over the globe. So China started early. But then he also takes us through China's economic decline in the 19th and the 20th century. And at that time, of course, the Europeans and Americans were becoming more dominant and coming to the fore in the global space with their colonial experiments and whatnot. And finally, he brings us back to the present times with China's economic renaissance under Deng Xiaoping and Xi Jinping. So you cannot undertake a study of China without looking at dynasties, and that is why today, as we have been doing all week, we dedicate this book to none other than Gideon Moi. So, because where he's from, his political trajectory is dynastical. His father was the second president of the republic. But the word dynasty in Kenya or in our politics has gained a very unsavory connotation, perhaps because it's associated with entitlement. But this idea is not fair because dynasties do not necessarily mean unchecked power and perpetuity. So we'll draw the example, the Chinese example. And they're from ancient times because they have had many dynasties. They believed in what they call the mandate of heaven. And that is that dynasties derive their power from God, their authority from God. However, the mandate had 4 principles. The first one, of course, is that heaven grants the emperor the right to rule. That is number 1. Yeah. And number 2, the second principle is that because there is one heaven, there can also be only one emperor at a time. The third one is that and this is the most important perhaps, the emperor's virtue determines his right to rule. And the fourth one is no one dynasty has a permanent right to rule. So signs that a particular ruler had lost the mandate of heaven included rebellions or peasant uprising or invasions by foreign troops, and even things that were beyond the emperor's control, such as earthquakes. So although the mandate of heaven sounds very much like, I think we have talked about it here before, the divine rights of kings, which is a very European concept or model, they're quite different. In the divine rights of kings, the European model, a certain family had the right to rule forever, regardless of the ruler's behavior. Unlike, of course, what we have mentioned in the mandate of heaven, which justified rebellions against the unjust, the tyrannical, or the incompetent ruler. For instance, if the rebellion was successfully overthrown by as a rebel, even if they were a peasant, they could become an emperor and they could gain the mandate of heaven. Did we dedicate this book to the wrong person?
I had that thought as you went on. Interestingly, I'm talking about an emperor who was actually a peasant, came from a peasant farming family. And so I want to dedicate some lessons for Gideon from Emperor Hongwu, and he was part of the Ming dynasty that reigned from 1368. And so so he comes to power, but he has some very interesting lessons. He had a cause. Because he came from a poor peasant family, he always was very pro-poor policy led, right? And so the Ming dynasty is well known for powering the agricultural revolution, and he did this in a number of ways. So Hongwu Emperor was known to be cruel, but he was an able ruler. And so from the start of his rule, one way in which he favored the poor was to distribute to young farmers some land. So if you had reached manhood in the 1370s, he would give you a title of land, and it was not transferable. So you could not just sell this land for no reason. And he also declared that those who cultivated wasteland, so land that just didn't look like it could do much, could keep it as their property and would never be taxed for it. And this really helped spur the agricultural revolution. The other thing he did, the Hongwu Emperor, was he paid special attention to irrigation, which is an important factor to farming, right? And so he would send a number of students, millions of students around the provinces to develop irrigation systems and teach farmers how to use them. And this again spurred the farming revolution.
Especially since they were growing rice.
Exactly. Then the other thing is he realized that the wealthy and the gentry really encroached upon poor farmers. They would try to take their land, they would try to pass off their tax burdens to the smaller farmers. And so he instituted 2 systems that were really important at the time, the yellow records and the fish scale records system, which served to guarantee that the government received its income, but also that people could enjoy their private property. Like it was your property, nobody was going to take it away from you. The other thing this emperor did, which was instrumental to their power, was they had a powerful army, but they also used this powerful army not only to feed itself, but to feed the nation. So if 70% was not needed for security reasons, those 70% of the army were actually they were given farmland and they were given inputs and implements and they farmed. So that not only did they feed themselves, they fed the nation. So my advice to Gideon Moi is that we can all remember, I guess, the president for various reasons, his father, President Moi, for Harambe, Nyayo, Maziwa, all those things.
Peace, love, and unity.
But Gideon also then needs to cultivate sort of his own cause.
Yeah.
He needs to be known for something. So under the Ming dynasty, you had multiple emperors, but they all stood for different things at different times. And so even for Gideon, as he, cultivates his political career, he needs to think through what his cause will be.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let me talk about contemporary China. And of course, I will poke holes once again at democracy.
Yes, that's been your theme.
And why it's not working. That's my theme for the week.
Yeah.
And why autocracy is the better bet, and why we should adopt this as a country. So for China to take off economically, Mao Zedong had to die. And today, contemporary China excels primarily because of two reasons. First, it adopted capitalism as an economic ideology, and it abandoned democracy. In fact, China had attempted democracy in the early 20th century, but failed spectacularly. And that's what led to some of the dissatisfaction among citizens, which eventually led to the Cultural Revolution led by Mao Zedong in the 40s. And at that point, when democracy failed, China were good students of history, and they discovered that all the nations that have acquired economic might, all the nations that we glorify today, did not do so under democratic conditions, but they did so under autocratic conditions. Look at the non-starter, for example, that is India today, totally unable to live up to its potential. Why? Because it remains a democratic state. And I'll give a few examples from history of how great public works, great achievements have been accomplished under autocratic power. The highways of Europe that were built under the Roman era, they were constructed not when Rome was a republic, but when the dictatorship of under the dictatorship of Julius Caesar and his successors. The great roads of Asia by Genghis Khan, some royal roads across Asia Minor by Darius. Germany's Autobahn, Third Reich, Italy's Autostrad, built under Mussolini, the supreme leader of Italy, and arguably even the interstate highways of the United States of America, created by the soft dictator, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the only American president to be elected for 3 consecutive terms. In fact, it was only after him that they changed the Constitution
to 2 terms.
To 2-term limits, right? And in the words of Robert Moses, the master builder of New York, he said, "Pure democracy has neither the imagination, nor the energy, nor the disciplined mentality to create major improvements in society." So this is the path that China is on. This is what they learned from the democratic experiment. It didn't work. And after Mao Zedong died in 1976, they decided, you know what, let's adopt the free market economic principles of capitalism. Let's abandon democracy. Let's experiment, and let's see where we go. And that worked. Second reason, and finally, China has been able to excel since Mao's death over the last 40 or so years because of its leadership style. They transitioned very successfully from a form of autocracy to a different one. So from rule by one man to rule by a committee of bureaucrats who style themselves as politicians, but they're really not politicians. These are professional bureaucrats. And normally Mao was the kind of person who was a populist, like I spoke about yesterday. But now you've got a country that is led by these bureaucrats who are just very keen on targets, very keen on delivering the agenda for the people. And today, China is a happier society than it was 40 years ago. It's more successful. People have more money in their pockets. And I believe this is what, as Kenya, we should be aspiring to.
But they have less human rights.
Human rights are what? Human rights. Would you rather have human rights and you're earning 100 shillings a day, or would you rather be earning 5,000 shillings a day? Yeah, we minimize, squash those human rights, but we'll give you 10,000 shillings a day. Which Kenyan, which peasant, which lumpen will not take that offer?
Me.
You won't.
Me as a lumpen. Also.
And by the way, it's 10,000 for you today, but for your child it will be 20,000. For the grandchild, it'll be 30,000 shillings a day.
So
that's the story of South Korea.
So
the
who will
story
make
of South Korea?
Who will be in the committee of dictators in Kenya? Matiang'i
and like-minded people, like-minded people who are passionate about this country and passionate about our children and our grandchildren, your children and your grandchildren.
Fantastic, Jeremy. You make a very compelling case there. So on a day where we had a winning headline from the Star and a winning cartoon from the Standard, I want to leave you with this. It's on legacy. It's for Gideon Moy. It's an act of responsibility to leave a legacy. All good men and women must take responsibility to create legacies that will take the next generation to a level we could only imagine. I truly believe that part of what makes us good and honorable people is to have a foundational part of our lives based on the goal that is leaving a legacy. And that's not only for him, but for all of us in our daily lives. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also find us on TV on GoTV, Pankrita, and Star Times. Have a lovely evening.